Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Today, we continue our 2020 webinar series with the topic, Safely Return to Work with Webex Rooms. I'm your host, Joe Wachna, and I'm happy to introduce your speaker today, Mr. Jason Hansen, Head of Growth and Strategic Communications for Webex Rooms. So now, without further ado, here's Jason to kick off Safely Return to Work with Webex Rooms.
Hey everyone, as Joe mentioned, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I just want to kick this off with this. As we look at our current environment and we look to the future of work, many of us wonder, how things will change. And more importantly, what does that mean for us individually? Some of us can't wait to go back to the office. Some of us never want to go back, and others are just unsure and a little nervous about it. A survey was done to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies in the States, and here are the predictions you might find interesting. 74% of workers will phase back into a return to office by 2022. But 26% of workers will work from home indefinitely. So as we look to take care of our own needs and our organizations, how does that translate? We'll look today at what matters most as we adapt to this new normal, our well-being, and how to best support that, leveraging technology that is more than just video. It really helps us destroy the space that keeps us apart while still being connected. First, our new reality requires us to work from home at the moment, and we have quickly adapted to maintain productivity while at home and in our personal offices. The fact is that our personal office has now become an extension of a traditional office. And for those of you in IT, I'm sure that's top of mind right now. How do we harness this world right now where our home lives have become really this blended personal and professional balance where from an IT perspective and as organizations, we are now entering the homes of our workers in a sense, right? And we now have to take a look at what that means. And you know what? That's okay, because work is really what we do. It's not where we go. You might have seen some of that in our blogs at Cisco and in presentations, but I passionately believe it. So it's okay if we're at home right now working. And the important thing in this discussion of home and traditional offices is that wherever we work, we need access to the same or similar tools that support productivity. Whether my workspace is here at home where I am today, or in a traditional office, or frankly just on the go when we start traveling again. I think what that means is that there is a new experience we have where we have to consider in our previous life, conference rooms were outfitted for team projects, and so it was okay back then if we had a short 45-minute meeting on your laptop, if that's at your desk or at home. And now we're immersed completely in these virtual environments, meetings at hours at a time, back to back, right? You could barely get a cup of coffee if you drink coffee or a sip of water or soda. And so what we need is a fatigue-free, lifelike, high-fidelity experience. And that it should be a natural experience with authentic interactions, as though we were face-to-face. That's really because most of our meaning comes from these nonverbal cues, right? People talking with their hands like I am, or your facial expressions. So our ability to interact in this high fidelity, whether we're in person or remote, frankly, it's critical to our productivity. And honestly, others agree. In a recent survey, which, by the way, was done pre-pandemic, 91% of employees believe in organizations across the board that high fidelity matters. And of those people who were emphatic about that high quality, 79% were viewing video for more than 3 hours a day. Sounds pretty familiar with the experience we have in today's world. That means that as companies plan to balance work between traditional offices and remote in our new normal, what does that evolution of workspaces look like as we plan a return? What should we do? What adjustments should we make? What should we keep the same? As we consider that, I think it's important to reflect on how those meetings were and are and will be. And, for example, we're all used to having these meetings in person, right? And collaborating in a conference room. So typically, when we've been in a traditional office space, you kind of all pile in, right? Maybe 8 to 12 people, and a presenter is at a physical whiteboard, we're ideating, we're working together. And since most of us were together in one room, video and virtual meetings were really additional support for the handful of remote attendees, at most. Except for, right, I know that there are those of us out there, myself included, who have really been in this virtual world for a long time. But think about that. The majority of people, this is really the experience we're accustomed to. And as we look to what a return to office may look like, there's this shift, right, where there's social distancing measures that we're all dealing with worldwide, and a workforce that's grown accustomed to working from home, where our meetings are now focused on remote attendees. So as we go back to the office, that will continue, even if it's just in the conference room next door, because we're required for our own comfort and for local regulations to have these social distancing measures. So instead of 12 or 20 people, it may be 3 conference rooms of 4 people or more, right? Well, the amazing thing about Webex Rooms is that we've always delivered this fluid collaboration experience that our hardware and software is designed to connect people with consistent experiences. And now what we'll see is people co-creating on a whiteboard digitally. It won't matter where you're working from, home or in the office. It's going to translate a new way while supporting the same experiences that you're used to. And I'm curious how you all are doing out there and what your current situation with technology looks like in your meetings. Joe, I think we have a poll. If you don't mind popping that up, I'd love to get everyone's thoughts. You'll see that in kind of the right-hand corner there of your WebEx, and you can answer some of those. I'd love to see what you think. So if you know this tune, sing along. Dun 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 dun. I think you guys know the rest, right? All right, I'm gonna let you answer while I move along a little bit. For Cisco, one of the ways we want to support our community worldwide, and what we've done for quite a long time now, actually, is embedded intelligent technology into our hardware. So these are powered by NVIDIA chips, powerful for artificial intelligence, giving you the most complete and innovative portfolio, in my opinion, in the market. So you can work from any space. So it's whether you're at home, at the desk, or all the way to the boardroom. Many of you who own some of these devices, you know that to be true. And really, for too long, people have been forced to adapt to technology. I remember having to do that, quite frankly. You have to work with things to really feel productive. And I hope that for those of you who have been partners of ours and a part of our community of people using devices from Cisco, that you see we have the technology that adapts quickly. So as the world changes, we're able to meet those needs in an agile way. And for those of you considering and looking at that, well, that's what we hope to talk about further today and help address those needs really from this hybrid workplace, where the importance, again, is to deliver this consistent experience no matter where you are. So whether I'm in person or remote, I should be able to work consistently, work safely and comfortably, and have my well-being met. So touchless, being able to talk through or start a meeting through a personal digital assistant, using your own devices so that you can have the comfort of your own device and not touch someone else's device to operate our remote meetings. For IT to be able to do utilization of space, and for our messages to be put out and pumped out in real time, and to creatively work. All of those things are important, not just at home, obviously, but at work too, right? And in that sense, we're delivering a hybrid workplace, one that extends beyond the meeting room. It's intended to be face-to-face. It considers your well-being, and it's fluid. We talked a little bit about the traditional office space. I'm not going to hang on this too long, but I'll let you digest briefly some of these points of creating open and flexible workspaces. How do we redesign and reimagine the real estate we have today? Working from home, how do we keep people feeling connected? That's so important to our well-being. And some of the ways that we're doing that with Cisco and enabling that is by providing many of the things that we've talked about so far and that we'll continue to explore. And through our partners as well. I think that's super important to mention. In fact, I'm going to switch gears here and set the stage for really all of this being beyond the conference room, beyond the meeting room, right? We're not just talking about video anymore. We're talking about how we go way beyond that. And I want to introduce my friend and peer, Chris Botker, to chat with us a little more about these use cases, to really dig into all the things I've talked about, because while they are evident probably to many of us that they need to be addressed, how do we address it? And I'm happy to say Chris has some great things for us to look at and consider as we look at how to address our work today, the now, and connecting that to the future of work, right? Because it's very important that whatever we invest in today has longevity as we explore this hybrid workplace and the agility to attack those needs as they change. Hey, Chris, can you bring us through some of those use cases, buddy?
Sure can, Jason. Thank you very much, and hi, everybody. So as Jason said, the next two sections between myself and Richard, just to give you an idea of what you're going to not only see, but I will tee it up a little bit with some background as well, is I want to really show you some of the use cases. So Jason's gone ahead there and is showing a high level as to how things are evolving and the things that you need to take into consideration. I will show you some use cases that specifically pertain to how you can safely go back to work. And then what Richard will do is he will give you a peek under the hood to give you a little bit more information as to what's core in the Webex platform as well as the Webex room systems. And then hopefully what you'll see is you'll see all of those elements coming together. So before I start, if you took note of the very first stat that Jason gave you, it was really how many people are expected to return back to the office. So one of the things we hear about constantly now is, oh, everybody's working from home and it's always going to be from working from home. And, you hear some of these big tech companies now saying, okay, well, we're not going to have people back until summer 2021 in our offices. And yet it's curious, if you actually look at some of those tech companies, what have they done in the past to their offices? They made them unbelievable places to work and collaborate. They provide you with gourmet chefs. They have the best gyms that you can ever think about. They have spas. You can get a haircut. You can get free food all day long. So if you think about it, there's a significant population that said, you know what, I'm young, I'm going to live in the city, I'm going to be in a 700, 800, 900 square foot apartment studio, and that's okay because I spend most of my day at work. I've got all my facilities, I can take my dry cleaning, everything else into work, and then, in the evening I'll go out and I'm only going to spend the time in my studio for a short period of time. That's now changed. Not a lot of those people signed up to be in their spaces 24/7, and I think, people are also not convinced that by staying at home, you're actually going to, all these amenities that these offices did suddenly become worthless. They don't. So I think for many, it's clear, it's like, hey, we need that social interaction in the office. Do we have a hybrid environment? Absolutely. Do we want to give our employees flexibility? Yes. Do we want to dictate to them, you're never coming back to the office? That's a dangerous game. And I don't know whether any of you saw the Woodside case study that was playing at the start of this event, but you heard him say there, the reason they did all the things in their office space is because they wanted to attract and retain talent. And I think that's going to be the big thing moving forward, is how do you actually go about doing that? So given that, let me go ahead and share with you some more stats that sort of start to, back some of those things up and give you an idea of, what people are thinking when they're working from home. So this is a Deloitte study that was done recently, and these are sort of, again, just like we have with COVID-19, unintended consequences from a health perspective, we also have unintended consequences from a collaboration and a working from home perspective. And if you look at that, 40% of people said they were distracted and had a lack of focus when they were actually at home. And of course, we all know what the distractions could be kids, family, you name it, but lots and lots of distractions. You might not have the space. If you're in a studio apartment and you're sharing that with somebody, you may not have the space for both of you, let alone then if you have a family, to be able to all work from those different places. So lack of focus, isolation. A lot of employees are saying, you know what, I'm starting to feel disconnected. You're getting the CIOs and CTOs giving themselves a pat on the back and saying, we've done a wonderful job. We've put all the technology out there. They've got all the tools that they need. We are great. But what somebody hasn't taken into account is really the human, social, and emotional aspect of, okay, but how do you do the next bit, which is make sure that they feel engaged and that they feel connected to the organization. And you see some of the others there as well. So then when you take that to a health aspect, this is also from Deloitte, and they're seeing some trends. So the first one is people want to feel that they belong to the organization. That's what they want to feel, so that they can actually feel that they are contributing to making the organization successful. So again, whilst 93% believe that that's important, only 13% are saying our companies are addressing of making us feel belonging. And I think if you looked at what Jason talked about earlier on, part of that is if I have a great experience with my teammates, with my management and what have you, and then and I can collaborate efficiently and effectively without the technology getting in the way and having to jump from one platform to the next, to the next, to the next, then I'm going to likely feel more and belong there. The second interesting one is designing work for well-being. So suddenly, which we hadn't really had before, but suddenly, when I say we hadn't had that before, it's from a individual perspective thinking about it so much. A lot of organizations have thought about well-being at work from a complete environmental perspective in terms of the air and everything else, but also from, do we have natural light on the outside? Should we have less conference rooms that are in the center and more on the outside, so light's coming in there? All those sort of things. Should we have more pure air coming in there, fresh air? So again, those two aspects are huge. And really what I wanted to show you is I'm going to go and take you through some steps as to how you can affect those positively by basically having a much greater experience to allow you that engagement. Now, I'm just showing you a couple of stats here, but for any of you, and this will be in the deck afterwards, but for any of you that want to go in and see those full reports, I've got the links in there, and you can actually go and see those full reports there. So the things that I'm going to take you through is, one, what is the most critical space when you get back to the office that people will have the most fear about? Conference rooms. because we've all been educated that if you are within 6 feet within somebody who's infected for more than 15 minutes, then you could get the virus. So anything that's in a closed-in space, generally it's been agreed that outside you generally don't tend to have this because you've got a lot of fresh air movement, so you can't get enough viral load in across in order to get infected. Likewise, what are you seeing actually with all the emails that you're getting from all the different airlines, from the CEOs from the airlines? You're saying, yes, guys, we know you're in this tube, but just to let you know, we change the air 25 times an hour in that tube, and we put it through HEPA filters that filter 99.97% of the particles. And they keep on telling you about that. And in fact, studies have shown that even though the virus has spread country to country, there's been very little evidence that it actually was caught on the airplanes themselves because of that air movement. So how do we then bring that back into the building? And I will show you some of those things as to how we can actually go about doing that in a physical room. Now, part of that then is also about what is the how do I know the air is clean? Many of you may not know, by legislation in many states, countries, you name it, typically you have a maximum of 20% fresh air that you need to put into a building. Why? Fresh air is expensive and takes a lot of energy to heat or cool. So 80% is recirculated. Well, people might not be happy with that. So they know that if the air goes stale, then it's likely I'm going to have a higher chance that nothing has moved around either. So I'm going to be concerned from a safety perspective. So one of the things that you can do here is you can basically take an IoT CO2 sensor, carbon dioxide, and then you could pump that in and make the system, and I'll show you how that works. I'll give you an example of that. You can then make the system inform the users as to, hey, the air's not good in here, please move to another room. And it could then, if you've got that integrated with some of your wayfinding technologies, it could then show you where else to go as well. Likewise, on the previous slide, it's all about people count. So our cameras count the people in there as well, as you may have seen in the video, again, at the top of the hour there, that if there's too many people, it can suggest, please move away from this room. And again, I'll show you those sort of things. So previously, people didn't think about that. But carbon dioxide is one of those things is you don't know that it's affecting you. You will get irritable, you'll lack concentration, you'll get less productivity, but you don't actually know that it's the carbon dioxide that's causing that. So this is a way then to say to the employees, hey, if there's any area that gets unsafe, we will notify you. In other words, we will drive user behavior. Not only giving analytics at the end of the month to the building management or the building manager, but also being able to drive people in real time and drive that user behavior. And likewise can do the same when you actually are in a common area where you might have a digital signage like this with one of our room kits on top that can do the same sort of thing, but now it might take a people count in from the network and then be able to say, yeah, okay, there's too many people. What's the value of the video system in that case? It's I can do the last step of enforcement if people don't react. So the worst thing is that people are there, they're not reacting, and now what do you not do? Normally, you would then have to send somebody in to say, okay, people, there's too many people in here, now you're going to exacerbate the problem. Here, you can actually drive it out so that you can bring somebody on the screen to then be able to interact with those folks. So, as I said, let me then actually go ahead and actually show you some of these things. So one of the things is that you'll see from Richard some of the real core capabilities that feed this, but there are also some platforms out there that really enhance that. So one of those is Appspace. Some of you may know Appspace as just digital signage, but what I'm going to show you is how you can put that onto steroids and how you can actually help keep people safe. So for example here, we're going to take a little bit of a journey through the office, and I'll stop at different places so you can see actually what's going on. So this could be in the lobby. You may see right up here a Webex share that you can put into digital signage mode, and you could also then sit in those two chairs, for example, and throw something up and use it as a collaboration space. But when it's not being used, it's going to go through there and actually give you information. Likewise, when I get to the reception, I can use one of our desk pros to actually go and log in. Now, obviously, a lot of people are concerned about touching stuff. So what I can do if I want to is I can say, okay, everybody has to obviously pre-register in this case, but I can actually go and take a, there we go. So I can open that link on my phone, and then you'll see then it's going to go straight into, and I can start it from here. I can't show it to you on the phone that easily, but you can see how you could use the QR code in there. So I'm actually going to show you it on the system itself on here. So I can go in and I can say, okay, let me go and check in. So I'll go and check in, and let's say somebody's coming to visit me. So let's say Steve Smith, and he's at ABC Company, and he's going to come in and he's going to come and see me. So he checks in, he's going to select that he's visiting myself, Chris, and the visit type is he's going to have a meeting with me. Now, when I'm in the office, typically we are an R&D facility, so you have to sign, obviously security is paramount here. So now the system can take a photo. And then at the same time, we are required to make sure that all visitors sign an NDA when they're on our R&D facility. So here's the NDA, and I'm going to sign that. What is the time? I'm going to say 1:30. It's much easier on the real system to go and do that. So now what I haven't figured out yet is how to make the paper come out of the screen on that little printer yet. But in real life, that will actually come out. It'll print a little badge for you, and then you'll see on, then you have your information ready to go there. Now, what it's done in the background is it's actually gone in and sent me in my Webex Teams. Let me just go here, visitor registration bots, and there you go. It's actually, and this shows you the power of that integration. It's actually showing me the picture that was just taken, and then you'll see there is the signed NDA, and I think if I go at the last page here, there you go. Then you see my scribble and the time that I put in there as well. So that's one example of how you can do these integrations in there. So great, we've checked in. I can go and find out where people are and what have you. I can then go and look, and I need to take the elevator. So this is another example that I just gave you from that safety and security aspect. I can now have a room kit on top of that digital signage. And if people, let's say there's a fire and people are congregating at the elevator, the system will see that and will then automatically notify the people there by pushing to the screen, you need to evacuate and down the stairs, not the elevators. If they don't react, the fire marshal can come on real time and then actually discuss with those people as to why they're actually standing there. Likewise, when I then get to the room, I have the choice of the panel in the front to either automatically allow me to check in, because again, when I walk into the room, the system can detect that it's me, or it can just detect that it's a person. It doesn't have to have identity. I can opt in to that identity if I want to, and that would just make my life easier, because then it says, okay, Chris has checked in. I know he's in this meeting. Let me now show that he's actually checked in. Likewise, I can scan like you see, so I can use the same QR codes. If I don't want to touch the panel for the time being, I can use that exactly that same method. So when I get into the meeting, then same thing again. So notice how everywhere where I'm walking through the building in this case, it's giving me the information. So I never have a case where I can say, well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that today the limit was 2 or whatever. I'm given that information all the time. And I think the key thing there is, for example, now the air in the room quality is good, but what happens if it goes bad? If it goes bad, it will tell me at the time that it goes bad, not just in a report 3 weeks from now, but at the time, so that I can then say, okay, you need to move to this room that is available. And again, if you have that integrated with your wayfinding or with your workspace management applications as well, this can really give that feedback and be that conduit, and sometimes what we call that human-machine interface into the actual building. Likewise, if we have an issue with room capacity, same thing. It can now say there's too many people, and here's an alternative. And I think that's the key. It's not just saying, hey, get out. It's here are alternatives as well. Very, very powerful. But at the same time, if I'm just using the room on its own, I then have the ability to then say, okay, maybe I've forgotten how to do something. So I can go in here and say, okay, let me see how I go about sharing content. So this is the touch display that you would have in a room. And it can then feed you
you can use your touch panel to share content both locally in your meeting room and in calls with remote participants.
Recordings that I need to want to sort of review or whatever.
Hello, everybody.
Boom,
Dr. Ford
I can
here.
bring that up as well in there, just to help my collaboration go a little bit easier.
I want to take just a second.
I mentioned the fire situation. Now I can point people and say you're going to exit this way, and it can put an arrow in or where you actually need to exit to. So again, all very powerful when you're actually in the room and able to keep your employees safe. Likewise, if I'm in the workspace area, it's the same kind of concept. You're seeing a lot of offices being redone now where they're going to give you, more space in between. I can push information to those screens so that everybody knows what's actually going on, and then you can see their statistics as well. But if something happens and I need to get on screen to go and tell somebody, I can come back on screen and say, hey guys, this is what needs to happen. So all of that is great, and actually interesting when you see the ducts above, again, pumping in that fresh air potentially. All of this is great, but what happens when I'm at home? Am I treated like a second-class citizen when I'm at home? And if you have one of our desk pros, for example, that Jason was talking about earlier on, then you can have the same functionality. You could put a CO2 sensor in your homes. In fact, homes are likely to cause bigger issues because your door was locked, and many homes, especially in Europe, don't have any forced air. They don't have air conditioning or forced air heating. So what happens is that you have hot water heating, so you're sealed, and you can very, very quickly have excessive carbon dioxide that you don't know. But you can use the same mechanisms to push that to the people at home, and I can very easily build the same type of channels in here as well so that I can get access, I can really get access to that. So that's sort of giving you an idea and walked you through the building as to what some of the use cases can actually be. And in this case, Appspace have built on top of that to give you really that interface between the devices that we actually have and then the way that users can then be interacted with in real time. So let me then tee it up for Richard and introduce Richard to you, who's going to take you through a little bit behind the scenes as to how some of these things connect. Richard?
Thanks, Chris, and I think the amazing work there looking at how the actual workplace and the end user impact that you get from the workplace in terms of some of these extra digital functionality. So I'm going to focus a bit more on the admin side and the partner experience side, because it has to all come together, right? It's about the end user, the admin, and how you can best get best use out of the data on both sides. So I'm going to look at a couple of things, but I'm going to start with the sensor story, because what Chris mentioned throughout his area there was around sensors around ambient noise, people count presence. He also mentioned some sensors we don't have today, like the CO2 sensor is a third-party sensor, but it can integrate, and it can you can use what we have internally plus integrate external sensors on top of that to really bring a great experience. This slide here just shows an example of some of the sensors we have on our devices today. When it comes to the DX, FX, and MX series, we have the presence and people count. And that primarily is face count, so you have to be kind of looking at the screen to get the most utilization out of that. But when it comes to the room and board series and the new Webex Desk Pro, we have innovated a lot more. We've added general noise sensors, ambient noise sensors. I'm going to show you how you can use some of these already today in the platform. And the Desk Pro, we've got some brand new sensors like temperature, humidity, and light. Which you'll see how we adapt these. These can be used right now by customers and partners for the APIs, and all these sensors are available by API. That's one of the big things that we promote here at Cisco Webex, is that we like to have an ecosystem, and all this data is available to consume in our platform, or you can extract that into other platforms and consume it there as well. But let's hop into Control Hub and kind of show you a little bit of from an admin point of view, what you can do today. So if I load up my Control Hub here, I'm in the Workspaces tab already. I'm preloaded in here, and I'm actually searching on other room types. So I have the current device I'm on right now called Hybrid Workplace, which is what I'm calling into this WebEx event with. And if I go ahead and click on this, I get this virtual cockpit. And this virtual cockpit can have a lot of information. It's polling the device directly right now for this information and displaying it live on the screen. So for example, up here, we can see the capacity. We have one person. This is set by the admin in Control Hub. So you can come up here and you can set a type of room. You can set the capacity. You can even upload an avatar if you want, and you can save that. That's going to be very critical when it comes to reporting, because when you start taking this data out of Control Hub, or even within Control Hub in some of the new analytics features we're building, you're going to like slice and dice and look at analytics based on, is it an other, is it a desk, is it a huddle room, is it a meeting room? So it's not just valid for the workplace, but also valid about like, well, not just the meeting rooms in the workplace, but also like, desks in the workplace and how they're being utilized. We can see that this device is currently the call. And this is me. I'm currently looking at this device right now. And we can see there's one occupant, which is myself. But we can also see some live environmental stats. Now, I've deliberately got 3 large fans below me right now blowing some loud noise up in front of me, which is causing the ambient noise level to be higher than expected. And we can see that here. This might have an impact on call quality. Luckily, the Desk Pro is quite good at suppressing any of that ambient noise. But it could also have an impact on the employee experience. I don't want to be sitting here all day with this 3 fans blowing up high and have to deal with it. My productivity is going to go down. So this tool is not just about from the admin or facility side in like looking at how the building is reacting, but also from the employee experience side and talent retention side, because you want to work in a workplace that suits you. And I think that's even more critical now as we like return to the office and go back to the office. You want to go there and actually have the best working experience possible. And that's why we're building these workplaces, right, for people to come and work and be productive in. But just here you can see some really great features, and we're going to be expanding this up as well. So it's not just, this is just a starter. This GA'd a couple of weeks ago. This is just a start of how we're going to add a lot more around acoustics, and you'll see some more things as well in the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. But on top of that, I want to talk about also that this is valid for like the remote work, because this Control Hub is a single pane of glass that's going to also let you manage devices, whether they're in the office or they're at home. So, you can easily, configure or diagnose or troubleshoot. With our troubleshooting tab, you can go in and see what's happening with the devices in the call. So it's going to give you a lot of benefits, not just in terms of the environmental aspect, but also from the device running aspect. And this control panel can be run anywhere in the world. Just an example here, I can see the live scheduled meeting. So say for an example, like, the room is being taken out of commission and you need to move people around. Right here, I can see what the schedule is for the next 24 hours. And I can decide, do I need to, contact Richard in this case with myself and say, hey, we need to move you. But you can actually see this live directly in Control Hub. The other aspect that we added recently is you can also upload images so you can visually represent the room. We realized that, like some admins are, visual focused, some are text focused. There's all different ways to consume data in different ways. I'm myself a more visual video person than a book person. And sometimes, maybe hybrid workplace, that name of a room doesn't really ring a bell, but an image can, trigger that experience and know exactly what's there. So this is just a start. And all this data is available by API, and we're about to release a brand new Workspaces API that will allow you to access all this data directly from the platform. So you can ingest this elsewhere. You don't have to use this view. You can also ingest this into other ways. And we have great partners like Appspace and others who have already taken some of those abilities and produced them into products that you can deploy right now in your workplace. So that's my little section there, but I'm going to hand back to Jason to take us home and talk around the poll, right, and the results from the initial poll at the very start.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Appreciate you sharing that with us, and Chris as well. Awesome stuff that is not only what we can deliver today, right, but it's all the things that are coming. It's the ability to continue so that whatever plans we're making today as organizations, those really will be able to be supported in an ongoing fashion and in a developmental fashion, right? I mean, that's the key. If we're going to be reimagining what work looks like and supporting that work, we need the ability to be agile and to continue to support the needs as they evolve. So I'm curious, Joe, what were the results of polling so far? I think we've got those up, right?
Yeah, sometimes they're kind of hard to see, but the 3 really big ones that jumped out, Jason, the first one was, hey, I use a laptop at home with no additional hardware. That was followed up by, I use a purpose-built video device for my virtual meetings and as an extra screen. And the one that was right below that, it's like a 1% difference, was I use a laptop, a separate monitor, and a webcam. So those are your 3 most popular responses.
Wow, yeah, and I'm seeing the statistics, and and they're pretty close, right? Except a bit of a jump there with just using a laptop. I think for me, honestly, that doesn't surprise me, and partly because think about this as organizations, we had to react very quickly to this new world, right? And I'm guessing that it's just about now. Those of you who are a part of teams in your organization that are making decisions on how to address this whole hybrid workplace, you're just catching your breath. You're just now going, okay, I can breathe a little bit. We've got people running and going, but how do we make it more efficient? And I hope some of what we've discussed today shows some of that. In particular, that there is a great use case to use these dedicated devices to build a consistent experience no matter where you are. But even if you have a laptop and that is, what you're going to be using for some time, the beautiful thing about this whole Webex platform is that you can have these consistent experiences. I feel like our devices just amp it up and level it up to a place where whether you're working from home or in an office, you really are getting a very seamless experience and one that's dedicated as a resource to you. I'm
Jason,
curious.
I've got a question here that came in, a Q&A.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that's been asked is, I don't control my building. So what is all this data valuable to me? Why is it valuable to me as an IT operations person to have access to all this sensor data? I don't know, Chris, I can answer that a little bit. Maybe I'll touch a little bit and you can follow up on that.
Let me take a swing at that one. So again, very, very understandable. Majority of organizations are tenants. So, and what's often happened is everybody focuses on the integration part as opposed to keeping your users safe part. So if you have access into the building management system, that's great, because that means you can then say, okay, there was another question here about the 100% fresh air, and how do you mitigate the energy costs on that? Well, you do that with people count. So if I'm counting the people as they come into a room and I know how many are there, then I can adjust the amount of air volume and the amount of fresh air that I actually deliver there. So that's how you would do that. The key thing there is, if you don't have access to the building controls, then at least keep your people safe by reacting to the outcome of that. So for example, if you don't have access and your people are in a room that doesn't have sufficient fresh air, but you're measuring carbon dioxide, which you could even just put a sensor on the wall there and connect that in, then make sure you move your people out of there once it's deemed to be unsafe. So even if you don't, and it's a great question because it often happens, even if you don't have access to the building control, think about it from a user perspective, how to keep them safe, and because the system will tell you. So as long as you get the system to drive the Webex room system to drive the user behavior, for the user, that's what they care about. Then the building manager a month later might say, oh yeah, I can see what our air was and what have you, but the building manager you may not have a building manager either. That may be part of the landlord, so you may not even have that either. So that's the key thing, is you can put these things in. And we just introduced last month a 9100T access point that actually has a low-emitting Bluetooth gateway in there. So you could just put your own BLE CO2 sensor, connect it up to some of our access points, and then you can start to measure it. If you don't measure it, you can't react to it. If you haven't got systems to drive user behavior, there's nothing you can do either. So,
and I'll follow up, Chris, now. I think you make a good point. So even if you can't use it yourself, the data yourself, consume it as an IT operations manager, having the data available in our platform that you can give to your other functions in your business, like facilities or the landlord in other ways, can add value.
Yes.
So it's about the collection of the data and finding the right people to consume that data, which may or may not be you. And I talk to customers all the time, and every customer is different, right? Every customer has a different function for IT operations or workplace resources. So there's definitely going to be a different way to slice and dice this. And for us, the key aspect is to give you the data so that you can then utilize it in the best way possible. And of course, we will deliver insights when possible.
Yes, and I think to add to that, because I think where it's useful is if I'm a customer, and let's say I have 10 conference rooms, and 3 of them have now shown brown, and we show that on the display inside and outside because the air quality is dirty, I'm a tenant, I pay for that. So now at least I have evidence, and I can go to my landlord or to my real estate company and say, hang on a minute, I have a basic expectation that you're going to supply fresh, clean air to these rooms. So don't despair if you don't have access. Leverage the data then to drive the change back to the people who can control it and who should control it as well. They may not know, and they're going to hide it from you. I guarantee it, they're going to hide it from you, because often that's, it takes money to go and do that right.
One of the things that I saw that was in the chat, which I forgot to mention during my section, was around room capacity and how that we can display that, in the room today. And I noticed that Aaron has replied to everyone. So if you're interested today, you have Webex Rooms today in your office or in your environment, and you wanted a room capacity macro to help using people count and people presence to alert of over usage or over capacity due to whatever the reasons may be, the policies, check out the blog that's posted in the chat, because it'll give you a direct link to the macro that you can download, and you can install that today. And we are using it ourselves internally. This is, we're using this macro, this system, to help our return to the office.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, real quick, Chris, the slides I showed early on, many of those are actual screenshots of what's happening in our Lysaker office in Oslo, Norway. So it is, Rich, just to validate what you're saying, this is something that, folks, Cisco's on the same journey, right? So we're speaking from a point of experience. Now, this isn't marketing fluff. This is something that in real time, we're going through these things. Chris, Rich, and I are all working our way through the same as you, right? And we're leveraging our experience and sharing it with you, really.
And maybe just to add on to Richard, what you were saying there, because I think that's you talked about the integrations and some of the APIs and some of the things that are actually available there. For any of you from a customer perspective, don't feel that you have to do this yourself. Work with your Cisco partner, and they can do and help you with some of these integrations. That's probably not some, because it can get complex. Depending on what you want to do, you don't have to do that journey on your own. That's why you buy from Cisco partners. They can go and help you with that and give you the expertise to do, to do those integrations. And actually, to a side note of that, there's also another question here about, is this what I showed only available with Appspace? So one of the things that I wanted to be clear on, which I sort of teed up at the start, is often, and again, at Cisco, we're guilty of it as well. So, but often you get focused on just the technology. And that's why when I teed this up, I said, you may know Appspace as digital signage. So if you're thinking, oh, I have another digital signage platform, can I do it with that? You may not be able to, because I think what you saw there, it goes way beyond what you would typically expect digital signage on its own to do. So what I would encourage you to do is look at that, look at to what you need. If you liked what I showed you and what have you, Appspace has all of that already, that's already built. So why reinvent the wheel? But be careful when you look at it at a technology level, because it doesn't necessarily give you the outcomes that we talked about and the things there, because that to me isn't just digital signage, it's much more, but you may feel it's like, oh, it's just digital signage. So hopefully I answered that question. Were there anything else on that?
I think we've covered a lot of the questions. I know we do have a few minutes left.
There were sensor questions here as well that I noticed. So there was a lot of questions.
I just replied to it, but I'll repeat it out to everyone, because it's been a good question about the board 55 or all the sensors that we have. So when I showed the slide about the sensors, and I showed that the room and board series had the acoustic, people count, people presence, a question that came up, are we going to bring more sensors to the current deployment? It's a bit of a tricky answer. Obviously, we're technically limited on hardware, like what's actually in the product. We're not going to go and add like temperature, humidity, into that product. I can on that one. But using the current sensors like camera, microphone, and speakers, we're always innovating and looking at how we can use them in different ways. So, for example, when we went from face count to head count, face count was used for doing camera intelligence to crop the screen in the right way. Then we innovated and brought that to head count that can be used in any activity, whether you're in a call or not. So we're always exploring about how we can utilize the sensors, and camera, microphone, and speakers are like, what everyone has, right? We all have eyes, ears, and a mouth to speak with. So we're using how we can use that in more intelligent ways as well. So keep an eye out, as we do innovate down that path.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think we're in a great spot to close up, I know there are probably more questions, and I would just encourage you. I know that many of us are active on social media, so like LinkedIn and Twitter. You could definitely reach out to us directly. I do think it's important to mention and to just reiterate what Chris said, that our partners, they are, not only customers, but those that sell and position Cisco. We should lean on each other for these solutions because it's an ecosystem, it's an environment, right? And I think that's what Rich and Chris are kind of touching on when we talk about Appspace and our different partners, or the abilities of our intelligence that are built into the devices to connect to a broader ecosystem. As you mentioned, Chris, it can get complex. So we just lean on each other to work through those things. Please connect with us, connect with our partners. I have, a couple places for you to be able to check that out. You can go and, Nancy, thank you. It was a pleasure. Sorry that that's up, but that's a good message. Nancy reached out and said, thank you so much. And my reply to you, Nancy, if you're still on, is I'm glad you could join. I just want to point out here that you can go to cisco.com, go/Webex Rooms to find out more. We have a bunch of blogs that have already been posted. I think those have been posted to the chat. But if for some reason you missed that, you'll be able to find coming announcements. We have some coming webinars, more information. This is just the icing on the cake, as we like to say here in the States. So go to the Webex Rooms landing and check back periodically over the next couple months. There's a lot of great stuff happening. Also, go to Collab Buy Now if you're curious. If you don't have a partner, right, that you trust and that you're working with, you can find more information about purchasing and digging in, or just request some assistance from sales or our business unit with us to dive in a little bit further, because this is definitely a conversation we love having, and we want to support you in your plans moving forward. Joe, I'll hand it back over to you. Thank you so much for your time today, everyone.